Welcome. For those of you just joining in, my name is Lee Oden, and I'm the CEO of Top Rank Marketing. And I'll be with you for the next 2.5 hours broadcasting live from New York. Global Marketing Day is brought to you by Semrush. And today, we've been having discussions about new technologies, digital marketing, optimizing for voice, SEO, and we have so much more to come. Now, if you have any questions for our speakers or our special guests today, please make sure you post them to globalmarketingday.com. You can also post to your favorite social channel using the hashtag globalmarketingday. And let's get going. Next up is Ryan Reynolds. And sorry, everyone, it's not that Ryan Reynolds, but it's this Ryan Reynolds. And we're so happy to have you here, global social and content marketing leader at Uber. Now, Ryan brings over 12 years of experience in online media, travel, financial, and technology experience across the UK, Asia, and North America, and leads Uber Eats social marketing globally. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you.
So Ryan's here to talk about putting an editorial voice at the center of your content marketing efforts with his presentation, The Importance of Editorial Content. But we don't just have Ryan with us. Afterwards, we're going to have a stimulating conversation with our panel of guest experts. First, we have Bob Ruffalo, CEO at Impact, and we have Susan Westwater, CEO at Pragmatic Digital. Bob is, as I mentioned, founder and CEO of Impact, which is a company focused on helping people find success with inbound marketing through education, events, and agency services. Susan is CEO, as I mentioned, and co-founder of Pragmatic Digital, a consultancy who helps clients identify and solve their marketing and customer experience problems by leveraging the voice channel. So, take it away, Ryan.
Thank you. Well, today, I will be running through the importance of editorial content. Hopefully there's a lot of key takeaways for everyone, but yeah, let's get underway. Okay, so just getting into the agenda first of all, we'll go through an introduction of editorial, build a case for editorial, then go into why editorial, and then finally why editorial shows up, and then followed by some questions in the panel. So first of all, I just really want to hit home this. For any brand, in a competitive landscape like today, if your message is only driven by your product, that's all you'll ever be known for. You really need to develop a relationship beyond that initial product. When we think about some examples, some of my favorite examples as well, one being Red Bull and energy drinks. Red Bull isn't just selling you energy drinks, they're selling you what happens after that drink. Additionally, when we look at someone like Airbnb, it's not just a place to stay, it's the actual experience. And then finally, my favorite, which is Nike. Nike isn't just selling shoes, it's selling you the ambition to be a better you. So when we dig a little bit deeper into each of these, what do? Consumers know what these brands stand for because the message is constantly reinforced through brands' editorial content. And that's not just through their blog, it's actually through a number of different platforms such as social and website and their apps. Okay, let's dig into the case for editorial. And you might see some puns in terms of people are hungry to connect with brands. That's obviously because my experience with Uber Eats. But 73% of people say that brands help them express their identity. And what are like the influences that we look into there? So one is friends and family, two is community, and then the third one is finally news and media. So that's the one that we can really tap into in terms of editorial content. And then in terms of like how that time is broken down on a day-to-day, 11.05 hours, give or take, is spent with media and consumer tech. So obviously there's a huge opportunity to actually get through to these consumers and users. Okay, I just want to show you this example, and this is within the food delivery space. There's 5 delivery platforms here, and I don't know about you, but I certainly can't tell the difference between each of these brands. It's completely a sea of sameness, and it really doesn't capture the brand's attention. Okay, so then thinking about like how we can deliver deeply original and impactful content, we can't just think about video on its own, although that is one of the biggest opportunities. We can also think about audio, so that's when we go into podcasts, and then social media, we can go live, and also interactive, and then gaming and reading. So you really need a full like diversity in terms of developing content. And this is something that I very much align to, and I believe that most brands and most businesses should align to this like mini funnel. So editorial content begins with building relationships. Those relationships build trust, and then that trust also drives revenue. And that's what your senior leaders really want to see. Gone are the days where you can just measure back top of funnel awareness, reach. Like, you need to be able to show that full impact. In terms of bringing that to life, this is an example of how I approach my strategy. So when I look at Uber properties, for instance, we have a number of different opportunities. We have a Uber Eats app, we have CRM targeted, we have web, we have riders, we have blog, and also like different functional apps. This is not necessarily for all brands. However, you should continue to explore the different options available. And then obviously you have social as well, where we have a tremendous amount of active users globally. Okay, why does editorial work? Sorry, I'm just saying this thing. So first of all, like, what is editorial? And editorial for me is editorial content is storytelling content published on any medium that shares our brand values and builds a relationship with our audience by entertaining and engaging and informing. But what does that actually look like, and what is the result of that? So messages delivered are 22 times more memorable. So this really does start to impact not only kind of social channels or content channels, but also performance channels as well. Also, people are 130% more likely to buy after engaging with a brand's editorial content. Gone are the days where you can simply just provide a transactional message like buy now or order now or whatever it may be. Consumers are really looking for that connection with that brand. Okay, and also when someone interacts with a piece of editorial content, they leave feeling 74% positive about that brand. And again, throwing one more number here, it also increases the value. So branded content helps to increase affinity and trust that leads to loyalty, loyal consumers that spend more. Okay, so let's think about like how editorial actually shows up. So for one, we always look to see story driven. Is there a narrative? Why is it interesting? Audience centric. So how does the content bring value to our community? And also data informed. So what is the strategy here? One overarching principle that's not on this sheet, but the one that we definitely align to is being authentic to your brand. Like, most certainly don't play in a space that you don't deserve to be in. There's a lot of trending topics these days, and some brands feel like they must jump into that space. However, your consumer, your user will call you out straight away if you're playing in a space that's not authentic to you. Then there's some additional guiding principles that I just want to cover. So quality over quantity for sure. This is something that everybody should align to. And then again, emotional. You really want to make that connection with your user and your consumers. You obviously want to make it engaging, also informative, and then going back to the point from earlier, so being distinctive. And then I just want to cover a few more points that's beyond the content. So one, empower your team. So give your team, trust your team that they can deliver and believe in them. Same again. And then also be authentic to the brand. I think this is so important when developing content. You need content that, yes, is informed by data, but also needs to align to your content pillars, and it's what does your brand actually want to stand for. And then finally, distribution plan. You need a solid plan that matches up to your content strategy. I showed you an example of our ecosystem of what we can deliver content on. You need to explore all opportunities. And sorry, this is the final one, and probably more important than any of the others. So being able to measure that full funnel. Like I said previously, I know this is repetition, but gone are the days where we can just measure top of funnel. You need to be able to show performance all the way through. Your overall goal might be to really focus in on that top of funnel, but what you'll start to see once you measure that full funnel is that it impacts the full funnel.
Great. Cool. Excellent. Well, thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
That was excellent, and I think you've made some pretty compelling arguments for adding an editorial focus to your marketing. So let's post some questions to our panel, but first I want to invite you who are watching to join our conversation and post questions to globalmarketingday.com. You can also use the conference hashtag and post your questions there on your favorite social channel, Global Marketing Day. So, first question, Susan, I'm curious, there was a phase in time when you always heard about brand publishing, right? Mm-hmm. And what went along with that was the idea of having to hire journalists. You must hire a journalist if you're going to create editorial content. Is that still true, or was that ever true?
That's really funny. We were just talking about this. Journalists are a great resource for writing about your brand, but the important thing is that you need to make sure that no matter who you hire, that you have a clear understanding of what your brand is, what those content pillars are, and then what are the editorial style guide and the guidelines that they should be following, because it may be the most brilliant piece ever, but if it doesn't align and it isn't authentic to your brand, then that doesn't help. But it does make a ton of sense to use a journalist. They're used to writing in a forthright manner. They're used to thinking about their audience. Even right now in the world of voice, some of the best flash briefing best practice leaders are people who actually have experience with the BBC as newsreaders, because who better to understand microcasting than someone who lived it every day?
Sure. Yeah, if I could piggyback on that too, because I think you're dead on. We at our company, we deal with a lot of businesses that are small, mid-sized businesses, and they are trying to do inbound marketing. They're trying to get content up and going. A lot of them have this vision of just outsourcing to an agency. And I like what you were saying, Ryan, about you have to be authentic. You have to know what your brand is all about, and you have to be able to share that. So it's much harder to be able to outsource this to somebody. So when we advise our clients, you're exactly right. That's what we advise them. Bring a journalist in. With a lot of media outlets that are not hiring as much as they used to, and there's a lot of journalist students out there. They're out there, they're available, and they make the best content producers inside an organization. And you just have to train them, but they learn the business and they learn it very well, and they produce some of the absolute best content. They get the subject matter experts involved in the entire company. Very, very highly recommended.
Yeah.
So I think people watching intellectually get the idea of going beyond content that's just about products and services. But practically, Bob, what advice could you give someone who's making those initial steps? They have to make an argument in their organization. They're looking for budget or staff or outsourced vendors or whatever.
Yeah.
What arguments can they make to make that transition, especially when you have executives who are so focused on product?
When we think about content, and the whole reason why we're doing this, we're trying to build relationships. And CEOs, executives, businesses, we're all looking to drive revenue from our content. It is a gateway for that. That's again why we have to make sure we're being authentic. We're focusing on the right areas of what we're trying to talk about. So, totally blanking on the question again. Could you bring that back to me one more time? Sorry.
What argument or what steps can someone take to transition from product-focused content to editorial content?
So I think the whole mission of our content is to educate as well. We want to be the best teachers in the world at what we do and what we're writing about and what our business is about. So when we're looking at our content strategies, like how are we educating, and from that the content we're doing that's educational. I'm totally. Susan, take this one.
So, what we try to do is we try to do some prioritization. There's actually a really great content strategist, Megan Casey, who has a quadrant of where you look at driving, which is where it's the TCB section of your content. And you need that because we're all for profits, let's face it. But then there's guide. And you need that because from a perspective of guiding someone and helping them understand the information that they need to know so that it's driving the business and that they're making a good decision and they feel good about it. Now, as we were just talking earlier today about the importance of voice search, all of that gets amplified because now it isn't just about someone may not be searching for your actual product. They may be searching for the outcomes or the benefits of that. So you need to start talking and building that relationship so that's discoverable as well.
Great. Here's a question for the panel. If you've been creating editorial content for a while, how do you keep that fresh while staying on brand?
Answer questions. So that's the biggest thing, is if you integrate your sales team and the people that are interacting with your customers, the questions that your sales team's getting asked all the time, or your subject matter experts or whatever you're reading online, just trying to answer the questions better than anyone else online. And I think a big part of going back to your editorial is going back to old content that you've already produced and making it better. And a lot of what we're talking about, Semrush, it's all about optimizing for search and driving that organic traffic in a lot of ways. If that's what we do at Impact. I mean, we just go back to old content, refresh it, make it better, make it better, make it better, because the world's always changing and there's new ways to answer a question every day.
This is for the panel too, and this is from our community. What do you consider bad editorial content quality? Like, what would be an example of just bad editorial, blog or
if it's not
otherwise?
Clear about who you are, if it's not, it's not aligning with your pillars. We like to give our clients 3 pillars of which everything can fall with underneath, and that always needs to be there. So if none of those are in there, then we would consider that bad. Grammar, like just basic stylistic or poorly designed, that also is. And I think another bad one is when you can hear it's all about me and not about you. I think those are really big, those are major watch outs of where it goes right back across the desk.
So Ryan gave some really cool examples, Nike and of course, beloved brand, and of course Red Bull is totally known as being a content or editorial content powerhouse. Are there any other examples you can think of that aren't whether they're large brands or even not such large brands that are doing a good job in editorial content?
Yeah, two that come in my mind right off the bat are Yale Appliance, which is a appliance store out of the Boston area. Now they have 3 stores. But they are absolutely the leading educators in all thing appliances. Wow. And I think one thing that they do really, really cool is because they service these appliances, they know what products are being serviced the most and serviced the least. They're actually able to take that perspective and that data that they have that's unique to them. They're able to actually create amazing content. So if you're looking for a refrigerator or a stove that you don't want to be paying to have that serviced over and over again, you're educating yourself before you're making that purchase. They do that really well. Another one that I think is phenomenal is River Pools and Spas out of the Richmond area. Marcus Sheridan's company, and they get almost 1 million visitors every single month on fiberglass pools. But if there's anything that you want to learn about fiberglass pools, they've written about it, they've covered it, they've answered every question buyers have. So that's another great example.
Okay, super, great. Ryan, here's a question for you. Any thoughts about storytelling for content in a very technical industry that targets specialists?
Cool. Yeah, I think it's about going back to the origins of the brand or the company. So an example that I would use in terms of like Uber Eats, for instance, it's there's a lot of restaurant partners there and delivery partners, and there are some amazing stories that we can really dig into. And it's not the most obvious option in terms of the content we deliver. Like a lot of people would think about, okay, why don't you focus on the actual food itself or the recipe? But when you actually peel it back a little bit, you'll actually find that there's a lot more kind of emotional connecting stories that go way beyond the actual obvious. So that's kind of how I approach it.
Okay,
I think if you can humanize it.
Yeah.
We all have problems. At the end of the day, people are coming to look at content because they're trying to solve a problem. So that immediately, no matter what the solution is, if you humanize it and talk about it from the problem you're trying to solve, that immediately starts to add a human element to it that adds a story.
Well, here's a fun question posted to the conference hashtag. So let's say you go through the effort and you create a published editorial entity for your brand, and it's going great, and you find out somebody is copying it. What do you do?
Someone's copying it. I mean, that's the best form of flattery, right?
Yeah.
Strategy.
Well, I think, you're always going to have that. So I would say whenever you're going to an editorial program, just assume that that's just going to be given. That's table stakes. What are you doing to constantly be the leader of the pack, the leader of your industry? and how are you investing more and doubling down, bringing more expertise, bringing more value? How can you bring a perspective no one else can bring? I would say, I would always go in that someone's going to copy you. I mean, of course they are. If you're winning, everyone's going to be looking and say, who's the winner and who's the leader of my industry, and how do we do what they're doing? Right. So you just always have to try make yourself better and better and better.
Yeah, I would even add on to that from the idea of copying, and this is the thing where competitive reviews kind of I have a love-hate relationship with them. I don't, that person who's copying me doesn't know what pillars I'm going after, what my objectives are, what my KPIs are. So I'm always going to be probably 100 times more authentic. And then I'm also, if I'm distinct and I've been out there first, they're going to look like an also ran. And so it's important to continue to stay true, and if anything, just get a little bit louder about this is what I'm about. And if someone else is copying it, someone will see this has been something that they've been talking about it from this perspective for a while. Wow, they must really know what they're doing. Others are copying them, and play it to that perspective.
Yeah, and is it the worst thing in the world if someone's copying you? Just be authentic to your brand.
Yeah.
It's just focus on yourself. I think there's too many brands out there that focus on other companies, and they always have this perception as well as, oh, okay, this brand just delivered this story or this series, must be amazing, we should try it. Just focus on your own brand and be authentic to yourself.
Yeah, if you're leader of the pack, are you really looking back a lot? Are you looking forward?
Exactly.
Great. Ryan, here's a question specifically for you. Following the example that Airbnb sells experience, what is it for Uber Eats?
What is it for Uber Eats? I think that's something that we're looking to define at the moment, but I think a little bit of what I touched on previously in terms of the stories behind the product. So looking at those restaurant stories, looking at the delivery partners, because there is an amazing untold stories within there. There's a great series that we released last year called Unpacked, and tremendously successful and some of the most beautiful content I've ever seen. Someone who was previously on my team, Vidya, massively talented person. So I think we're still trying to identify that, and I don't think it is the easiest thing to just identify straight away. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of research. Like Airbnb didn't come up with that overnight. That took a lot of brand research and a lot of dedication. So yeah, I think we're still working on that.
So while Ryan did touch on KPIs and measurement, that is one of the most popular questions in the chat is, how do you measure the effectiveness of your editorial content?
And every business can be different. If you're a small business, you might be looking more like, what's the revenue generated from this? If you're integrating this content, these videos right into the sales process, you can look at shortened sales cycles. You can look at increased close rates. Again, for a more inbound environment, you're certainly looking at typical digital sales metrics like your organic traffic, lead generation conversions. That's what we look at the most with our clients and for ourselves. I'm sure bigger brands are looking at a lot of other things. I'm sure you probably look at things totally different than we do in our environment.
Yeah, definitely break it down by your journey. And moving it forward, because in the awareness phase, you're not going to get straight to close purchase. So the biggest mistake you can make is trying to tie top of funnel things immediately to it's a progression. Yeah. That's why it's a funnel. It's not and so it's very important to look at those things like lead gen, but then saying, okay, how many clicks, how many of that have turned into email subscription, how many of that has turned to ultimately the contact that where I can close a sale, if you're looking from that perspective. So it's very important to kind of ask the questions you want to answer and then let your metrics come from there versus leading with a metric because someone told you that's an important metric.
Right. Yeah, and I suppose part of that is setting expectations, right?
Yes.
Like what's reasonable, right?
Absolutely.
Another part of that question, or the person asking was, what research techniques are you using to determine what new content ideas or new content should be?
Yeah, we have a very basic strategy, and it's really just asking the sales team, what questions are you answering over and over and over again, and how can we create content and videos around this, so next time you get asked that question, you say, you know what, watch this video or read this piece of content, and then we'll talk about it after. And again, that's what we're talking about in terms of like shorter sales conversations. So that's where we always start the process. If you've never done this before, we'll run people through workshops to extract that And I mean, we never have a problem not having enough to write about. I mean, we leave this workshop and we'll have 50, 100 different things to write about because there's so many things that sales teams getting asked all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very much of starting from if you can't talk to your users, talk to your sales team. They're the closest are, and continue that way. Other things that we've looked at doing is going on social, a little bit of lurking in forums if you want to get the language, and you also want to understand what those trials and tribulations are of just kind of looking from that ad hoc perspective.
Okay, great. Well, I want to thank our speaker and our special guests, Ryan Reynolds, Global Social and Content Marketing Leader at Uber, Bob Ruffalo, CEO at Impact, and Susan Westwater, CEO at Pragmatic Digital. We appreciate you sharing your insights on how brands can differentiate themselves in this sea of sameness that seems to be out there. Information overload, right? And of course, if you're on the social web, please share your favorite tips when it comes to creating editorial content. And of course, think of questions you'd like to ask and post to Global Marketing Day on your favorite social channel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.